What is up, and welcome to Bruin Bible, episode 20. We are so lucky to have a returning special guest, Iliana Limon Romero, the chief deputy sports editor for the Los Angeles Times. Iliana, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing terrific. We are honored to have you on once again. Unfortunately, I may be doing a little bit better than the Bruins football team is doing this week. A tough loss at home at the Rose Bowl to the Oregon Ducks. Granted, it was a top 10 team in the country, but the Bruins had them right where they wanted them after the first quarter, a 14-0 lead. They got exposed a little bit in the second, third, and early fourth quarter. Oregon went on a 34-3 run. UCLA made it interesting at the end. DTR gets hurt, and then Ethan Garbers throws a pick to kind of seal the deal. It was kind of just a heartbreaking loss. Iliana, I don't know if you were at the game or not, or maybe you were watching at home like I was. What were your impressions of the game, and where do you think UCLA can possibly go from this?
It's just another heartbreaker. You definitely feel for the fans and you feel for the players because there's been so many situations like this where you just it's like they're almost there. They've had so much momentum to watch the day unfold from game day. It just felt like, oh, this is going to be just like Stanford. This is going to come around and be just like such a huge opportunity. In fairness to Garbers, he did complete a great pass before the interception. Like that got completely overshadowed. That was like a great pass. And it's unfortunate. That's a really strong defense to be going up against and a really tough situation for a player to be thrust in right there. I felt like, it just sort of let the air out. And so it's going to be another test of how this team responds, about resolve, under pressure. That's a highly motivated Utah team, but a beatable one. So we will see a lot about how much this UCLA team believes that they can kind of pull it together, how much they sort of rally through adversity.
Yeah, it was a fun game to watch, unfortunately, until the end, because UCLA really did make it a contest at the end. They forced 2 turnovers with interceptions, one in the end zone by Jay Shaw. That was an incredible play to kind of get the crowd back in at the Rose Bowl, give them a chance. And you did mention something important about Ethan Garbers. You could not be put into a more difficult situation, I think, as a backup quarterback. Game on the line, you're driving. He made an incredible pass to Kyle Phillips on 4th and 8. Spoiler, we're going to talk about Kyle Phillips in a little bit, kind of his underrated year. Yeah. But, I just felt like this game was determined, at least in my opinion, by the offensive line not playing to its standards. And granted, you're going against a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau, and boy, did he have himself a game. 2 sacks, 4.5 tackles for a loss, was, I think, in the double digits when it came to pressures. This guy was a force to be reckoned with. But the offensive line, which was, one of the stronger ones in the Pac-12, just didn't play to the level they wanted to. They had a couple false starts, things like that, some penalties that kind of, hurt them. I remember the Alec Anderson one, the right tackle specifically, to start that last drive. But, it was just a game that was dominated by the line of scrimmage, unfortunately, by the defensive side of the ball. Even our running backs couldn't get going. Britton Brown and Charbonnet, 2 of the better backs in all the Pac-12, got held under 50 yards. What do you think about kind of the offense and how it looked against Oregon, and kind of where we can go from the future from here for maybe the last 5 games?
Yeah, I think what you saw was a lot of respect for the running backs and for what they can bring to the table. And then just ultimately, telling UCLA, you're going to have to win this in the air. Like, we are going to take this away. We're going to focus so much on this. And it was a formidable test. And again, the rally was impressive because I think there was a lot that you could say, like, hey, that's it. They were already probably done before then. It was really a big spirited push. So, I think that's something that's encouraging for that offense, something that you can build on. But ultimately, I think you can overpower some teams. I think it's a lot to ask to be able to just overpower Oregon. You're going to have to be balanced. You're going to have to make them respect the pass. And then, in order to be able to open up those rushing lanes, it's no knock on the tailbacks and the offensive line. It is what it is. That's a formidable line that you're going up against.
Completely agree. And this is a team that went into Columbus, beat the Ohio State Buckeyes earlier this year. This team is no slouch when it comes to playing the game of football. They have kind of struggled in recent weeks. They've been kind of playing down to their competition in a lot of ways. What do you think about Oregon kind of moving forward? Because this is relatively a very inconsistent teams. And, when I really looked up the stats for the year, it's kind of shocking. DTR has quite a bit better stats than Anthony Brown does at the quarterback position for Oregon. What do you think about Oregon kind of moving forward and maybe having a chance to playoff? I know it's very small margin that they can potentially make it, but still a chance nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, I just think they are held to the expectations of Chip Kelly. Like, that's the funniest part, is like they are held to the expectations of what an Oregon team that's dominant should look like. There is a sort of profile of what an Oregon playoff team should look like, and they look nothing like that at the moment. That's not really a fair comparison, but that's just the reality of the situation. The greatest inconsistency does seem to be on the offensive side of the ball, and that's what gets the most attention. And so therefore, they're just seen as not reliable, like not a reliable top 10 team, not a reliable playoff contender. I think going into the UCLA game on game day, they flashed the stats of the projections from their sort of playoff predictor thing, and it was like 2% for Oregon chance of getting into the playoff field, and it was like way below. Like Cincinnati was like at 26%. So it was like wildly different in terms of what the interpretation is. And there is a lack of consistency. There has been a dip. There has been a swoon. Chip Kelly had like the perfect array of things going for him. Some of his staff members at that time are now head coaches. Obviously, you have the talent level. You have a truly special quarterback coming through. You have a lot of things that really work in your favor that made everything click in the way that it did. And it wasn't necessarily instantaneous. There was some things that they built up that really, really helped. And there was some timing that was really beneficial relative to the rest of the Pac-12 at that time in that window. So, they're chasing sort of the same thing that USC chases, which is like, can you ever match, the recent Pete Carroll days? Can you ever match these things? And so they're going to be measured against that to a certain extent to see if they're a playoff team. And they're just like not anywhere near the Chip Kelly days. So there's that. And then in terms of just how they're playing, yeah, their offense is just not consistent enough. It's not performing at a high enough level. I don't know. On any given Saturday, do you think there's a chance Oregon loses? Yes. So, I mean, that's not a good sign for your team. I mean, that's nice for parity of the Pac-12. But if you're talking about like, are they special? Are they going to for sure win the conference championship? I still don't think they're for sure. I mean, they're certainly one of the stronger teams in the league, obviously from performance and what they've done, but they're beatable.
I totally agree with that. And I don't even know if they're the best team in their own state right now, as Oregon State is playing at a high level right now. I think that is going to be probably the Pac-12 regular season game of the year as we get closer to that, if Oregon State can kind of keep the momentum moving forward. I also know that you just brought up, former Chip Kelly staff members. I think it's time. We got to make a petition. Jerry Azzinaro cannot come back as a defensive coordinator. He has been absolutely brutal. I know fans have been calling for this for years on end, even before this year started. Iliana, are you ready for a crazy stat? Out of 130 teams in passing yards allowed, we are 125th in all of FBS. There's 130 teams. We are 125th. We're the only Power 5 conference that ranks that low in general, at least a team from a Power 5 conference. So it is not going well for Azzinaro once again. We kind of banked that the secondary was going to be better because they're experienced and they have, seniors out there playing. They've been around the landscape. They're going to get better, right? Not the case. Luckily, Jay Shaw made an interception in the end zone to kind of save them. They did force a turnover. They had a big pick. The true freshman corner, I'm blanking on his name, against Washington a week before this that did save the game. So they're getting some turnovers, but just the amount of passing yards that they're being allowed is just unacceptable for a defense. Is Azzinaro out after this year? Because at this point, I don't even know. He should have been fired about 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a change. I think it seems like Chip Kelly, like most coaches, is pretty loyal to the team that has helped him get to the point where he's at. That's pretty important to him, that chemistry. But yeah, there's some tough questions that have been asked about like how like the acres of space that these receivers end up getting. And it remains a question as it was since, really even the Fresno State game, all the way back. If you look at like just how much room and how much space they have to work. And yes, now they are making some better plays on the ball, but they're gambling. They're gambling more than they reasonably should with how much they've been able to produce and how well they've been performing. So it's a little disconcerting. I think there's a lot of questions for the entire staff right now. I think that we're in a position where this is a huge week. I mean, it may not feel like a huge week in terms of like where they stand or what's going on, but it is a significant week in terms of long-term impact and the confidence level that like this is the entire coaching staff going forward. I think it's big. I think you need these kind of games. You need to be able to go out and show progress, and a win like this is and a couple more coming down the road. Like, it's really important.
I completely agree. And I think if you can at least win this Utah game, you can go, hey, we got to our toughest stretch of the team season. We won 2 of the 3 games on that stretch. And, we did so. The only game we lost, we were in it till the end. We lost to a top 10 team on paper in college football. So that's like a moral victory. You can come away with that, feeling pretty proud about yourself. You're bowl eligible if you can get a win against Utah. Keep that momentum forward. But the thing that I keep stressing to UCLA football is you have this window. There's no coach at USC. They are kind of, out of the picture until they figure out what's going on there. You have a real chance to seize LA, and you had College game day there this past weekend. You had everything kind of trending your direction. You're up 14-0, and you just kind of squandered it. That's just how UCLA fans are feeling right now, is they're on the cusp of doing some great things. They just can't get over the hump. So,
right. So, I mean, your administration has done everything they can. Martin Jarmon played a role in game day coming. He pushed, he lobbied for it. He did everything going into the first game, going into the LSU game to bring people there, to keep people coming. Listen to what all the biggest problems were, try to pull up all the stops, went directly to the fraternities and sororities and said, get out here, support this team, got them into the spotlight. And then, they've had just multiple opportunities where they get up to the crest and then there's the letdown. And that's tough. And so there will be an assessment, because that's the game they play. There will be an assessment at the end of the year of like, did they do enough in this window? It is the perfect window, I agree, but it's also a challenging window, because you look across at USC and say, wow, their mess, this is a time for us to kind of, hit the gas and be able to push forward. At the same time, you also look at USC and say, this is what happens when you wait until during the season to make a coaching change. Whereas, if you're at a stopping point right here and you feel like we're not making enough progress, it sort of tells you, like, if USC had made their coaching change at the end of last season as opposed to 2 games into this season, how much better off would they be? How much more momentum would they have? Where would they be at? So some tough questions and some big moments coming up. It's sort of rare that you sort of circle it and say like, wow, those were the games that really decided that trajectory. I really think they're still in the middle of that.
I think you're spot on with that too. And there's a sliding door moment too. If they did make that call with Clay Helton last year, Urban Meyer, there's a chance he hadn't committed to the Jaguars yet. You could have gotten Urban Meyer. That's what the fan base has wanted since day one, is they want Urban Meyer in South Central. It's not looking like it's going to happen. I mean, maybe the Jags thing falls apart. He's had some already crazy incidents going on there in Jacksonville. So maybe he can kind of get out of that contract, similar to what Saban did with Miami going to Alabama, but it's unlikely. I think they're going to have to look at Luke Fickell. Maybe they get lucky with a guy like James Franklin, something like that. But I do want to ask you this while you're here. From 0% to 100%, how hot is Chip Kelly's seat right now in terms of being the head coach at UCLA next year?
Percentages are tricky. It's very hot. Like, it's very hot. And it's sort of weird, because if they win out, they go on a barnstorming tour from here, we'll laugh at the idea that it might have been like at a 90. But they lose this coming game, and then they kind of get it together, and then, like, I'm sorry, rivalry games are anybody's game. You're not guaranteed on that. There's talent on the USC side. USC entered this season as a contender for a division title. Like, have they fallen apart a bit? Yes, but it doesn't matter. You kind of throw all that out during a rivalry game, so that's not automatic. So all of those things come into play. Yeah, it gets a lot hotter. It's a sliding scale, but I would say it has the potential to be really bad, like really atomic level, or you perform up to what I think is your talent level and your ability, even if you're rolling a backup quarterback out there, you live up to that. I think you're fine. Like there's potential for it to be okay with that much momentum, but it's time to put the cards on the table. I don't think that there's like a lot more patience for a lot more. We worked hard. You can be proud of the team we put on the field. They pushed. We almost won. That's not really cutting it.
The tough thing I have is I know Chip Kelly is a hot name still in college football for given what he did at Oregon. It's tough to find maybe a bigger name to come in and kind of take that spot, but this is a results driven sports, and he has just not delivered the results that UCLA fans have been looking for, unfortunately, which has prevented him from keeping that seat a little colder than he would like. Moving forward, we got the Utah game coming up this weekend. This is a team that I think is always pretty well coached. Kyle Whittingham, such an underrated coach in the Pac-12. And they've really found a quarterback since Brewer went down. Cameron Rising, who was actually the starting quarterback last year, got injured in the initial game. He went out for the season, and now he's back. He earned back the starting job. 11 touchdowns, 2 interceptions since taking over, completing about 64% of his passes. They got Devin Lloyd, who was a finalist for the Buck-Kiss Award on defense, is one of the best linebackers in the country. They're just a tough-nosed football team that's going to compete. That's kind of what Kyle Whittingham has been doing there for over a decade now in Utah. Iliana, we want a prediction. Give me a score prediction. Who do you think is going to win this game and why?
Oh, man. I do see UCLA winning. I think because of so much that's on the line, I do think that it's a UCLA win, but it's a tough one. And I don't think we have lockdown defenses here. So I think it'll have to be like one of those 35, 31 situations. I don't think it's going to be an easy watch for fans. I think it's going to be stressful again because of the way the defense has been performing. And because, again, you might have a backup quarterback. I have confidence that even if that quarterback makes mistakes, that they'll still be able to put points on the board and move the ball. That being said, I mean, you're right. Utah's tough. They're hard-nosed. They are going through an extraordinarily emotional and painful season after losing a player. Second time losing a player in recent history. You know, some of these players have lost 2 teammates. That's really hard. But I still think that UCLA understands what's at stake. DTR did practice Wednesday after largely not practicing as much, being a non-participant in the media portion of workouts on Monday, sort of ratcheting it back up. He's kind of on an NFL schedule at this point in terms of like getting that day off on Monday, which makes sense to keep him healthy. And I think he's got a very strong will to win. I think the players really respond to that, and you've seen it. And I think there was a sense of looking back toward the sideline and wondering after Garbers completed that 4th down pass, is DTR coming back just like he did against Stanford? Are we going to get this magic again? There's a lot of comfort in that. So I suspect he plays, and I suspect that he plays a big role in helping them kind of get over that hump. And I think that Garbers will be well prepared if he has to step in, because there's a little bit more time, and it was real last week. So now it's going to be really real preparing this week. I think that combination helps them. And I think they've got the focus and the talent and the ability. It's just, there's a lot of veteran players on the team who I think sense that like they only have so much runway left. You've got transfers and other things, just a lot of experience that favors UCLA in a tight, tough situation. So I picked them, like I said, high scoring, close, not easy for fans to watch necessarily, entertaining, perhaps. But yeah, I like that chance. One of the other things, going back to what we were talking about with, the heat check, the attendance when they come back is going to be the hugest factor, because yes, you don't want to make a change unless you feel like you've got a name or a coach who can make an impact and can immediately help you. I think if you don't have the fans, it pays for so much of UCLA sports. So if you do not have them there, if you lose that attendance, if things drop, if you just hit a rough patch, which could happen, that's where things get really real for a head coach and for an athletic director who have to make some serious decisions. And I think Martin Johnman has come in and embraced Chip Kelly. Like, absolutely, this wasn't my hire, but went all in behind him, had given every indication that he's 100%, his guy. But there are other coaches out there. There's a possibility of looking in some other directions. He's not the only one who could win at UCLA, so I don't think he's got some sort of stranglehold on it in that case. But yeah, I think the fans have a big impact.
They do, and it's been kind of a tough situation getting fans out there to the games. Even when we had that hot start, obviously the LSU game had a lot of fans, but the next week, I mean, I heard on game day they were handing out free tickets to fans just to try to fill that as much as possible. And you made a great point on Martin Jarman. This was not his guy. He's evaluating everything from, can he prove it to me? Can he prove to me that this is the right hire for this university? There are coaches out there that could potentially do that. If Chip comes into this game and loses, and I hate to say this, I a commentator for the Bruin Bible, but I've seen this too many times. I'm going to be picking Utah to win this game at home. They're dedicating this game to their two slain teammates. Yeah. So that was when I heard that, I'm like, there's no way they can lose this game at home. I just haven't seen enough to kind of keep it there. And if they lose this, they're going to be 5-4 heading into those last 3 games of the season. It can really make or break it. So I'm 100% with you. I think there's a real option that Chip Kelly does get out, and the seat is become increasingly more hot, especially after kind of giving away a game against Oregon, the Fresno State loss. Even though Fresno State is, a solid program, coming off of an LSU win, you can't do that. Arizona State game, even the U of A game, we won that game, but University of Arizona is so bad at football that we were struggling that bad. That was a red flag and a half for me. It felt like a loss given how bad they were playing against such a lesser opponent.
Yeah.
So it's
you've got Arizona State in there too, where it just felt like they were really overpowered. So yeah,
that second half, I mean, it was just a completely different team that took the field against Arizona State. First half things were running smoothly. Second half, I don't think they put up more than 3 points in that second half. And Arizona State, I mean, granted, they've got a pretty good secondary for the Pac-12 and a couple defensive studs, but not a team that we should be struggling against offensively, given what we have on the line, the run game, things of that nature. And, DTR, like you mentioned earlier, is practicing this week. But I do want to kind of say I've kind of been in the camp of I want to see the pro-style quarterback kind of open it up with Garbers because we have so much talent in the receiving game. Iliani, I can't tell you how frustrated I've been as a fan. Greg Dulcich dropped a pass this week, and he did not play his best game. But that guy is the best receiving tight end in the Pac-12. I don't think that's even a debate, given what he's done in his big games. We talked about SC last time. He had 10 catches, 167 yards against the crosstown rival. 3 catches, 115 yards against LSU. A bunch of guys that are going to be playing the pros. He rarely gets the ball, and it frustrates me. We got guys like Casimir Allen, who it seems like every time he touches the ball, he makes something big happen, whether it's a reverse or a deep pass. I mean, he caught a big play against Hawaii, LSU, those games. Kyle Phillips has kind of been the one lone receiver, and I do love Kyle Phillips. He's having a great year. I do want to pump him up. But I just think if you can add the running game we have with the offensive line we have with Britton Brown and Charbonnet and kind of open it up with some more play action on the pro style, I think this is an offense that could be even better maybe in these final 4 games if you were to throw out a guy like Garbers out there. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely potential there. I think that this does open a door. I think this injury situation, I have wondered for some time, how much 100% DTR are we seeing at this point? I mean, I think there's no question we're not seeing 100%, but even less so. And so I think the timing is right. You already had to kind of rip off the Band-Aid in the last game that you can do that. I expect them both to play just because I think that is probably most comfortable. I know it's usually the sign of like not a consistent program, but we've actually seen quite a few college programs be able to pull this off a little bit more and more and give players some different opportunities and sort of keep defenses guessing a little bit. And I just think that it could happen. It could happen in that way. And I think it could unlock some things. I think the surprise of it or the instability of it will probably test a defense that's really hard-nosed and fired up. So I think that's a possibility. I just think it's really hard for them to completely go away from DTR if he's capable of playing, just because he is such an emotional leader. I think he's just he seems to be so well respected on the team, and because there's just a belief in him.
Yeah, I completely agree. The Stanford game was an instance where we really saw that play out. The gutsy performance, got back into the game, threw the game-winning touchdown pass. Iliana, you've been such a great guest. I just want to get one more request from you. We got 4 more games on the schedule against Utah this upcoming Saturday, Colorado, USC, the rivalry game. Anything could happen in that one, and California to close it out on November 27th. What is our record over that 4-game span?
Oh man, that's a really, really hard one. I mean, I'm very curious too. Like, I really want to know. Uh, you know, I don't know. I came into this season sort of thinking like it was going to rest on like how much DTR could get over his past, challenges of being the guy who could throw the ball under pressure in a situation. He showed a lot against Stanford. I think it's just if the coaches can be smart about it and not be overly wedded to sticking with him if he's not well, if he's not healthy. That's different than trusting him to lead your offense in general. So I think if they're willing to do a combination of quarterbacks, I think if they're willing to rotate and really open things up, as you mentioned, I think they have the ability to win every single one of those games. But I just don't know how they're going to perform. I don't know, like, if they're going to live up to that potential. But if I had to pick right now, I would say that they can win all of them. Like, I think they're one of the better teams in the Pac-12. Will they? I don't know. That's a whole separate question. Like, there's some major execution issues, but like the teeth of the schedule has largely passed. They've been competitive in a lot of situations, and I think they have a lot going for them. I think it's a good sign that even in the ones that were a little lopsided, that they fought their way back in, that they pushed, and that they've got that spirit around them. You sort of lean toward that, and for me, that gives it just sort of an edge in the direction that I hedge in that way. But this is very much like the Dodgers season. There was a point late in the regular season where you're like, this team could lose in like that one game playoff,
Cardinals,
essentially,
yeah.
or they could win the World Series. We didn't know which one we were going to get. And so I very much feel like it's going to be nerve-wracking for UCLA fans. I think this team will be entertaining. I think they will score. I think they will be stuck in close games. I think they will make mistakes that will infuriate their fans. But I think they have a chance to win out.
I love the optimism. Iliana Limon Romero, ladies and gentlemen, she was a great guest once again. Bruin Bible, we're out.